What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. Today I'm going to show you some macros that I've created with GNOME Sequencer Enhanced, an extremely powerful add-on that allows you to create robust macros that can perform most, if not all, of your rotation with a single button. This can be extremely useful if you have a disability like myself, or if you just want to be lazy. Bear in mind that these macros can be extremely helpful, but they also have their limits, so they're made primarily for those who are playing the game at a more casual level. But feel free to use them as you see fit. If you'd like to learn more about GNOME Sequencer and how to use it, I recommend that you head over to Wow Lazy Macros. You can find links to all of that and to import strings for these macros in the description. Today we're going to finally check out the updated macro that I've made for Havoc Demon Hunters in 10.2 of Dragonflight. Apparently the Demon Hunter has seen some pretty welcome changes in the latest update. I'm actually a little bit behind here. It wasn't actually very long after I uploaded my Vengeance Demon Hunter video where these updates went through. I just kind of made a note and updated the macro on that one. This one, I wanted to kind of make a new video because so much has changed. And so I apologize for taking a while to get this up between holidays and other things. But I'm here to do this now, so we'll go over it. But I'm not going to do this with every class in 10.2, and that's mostly because most classes haven't undergone significant talent tree changes. There might be some minor adjustments here and there, but nothing that I feel would require a complete overhaul of the macro and have to redo a guide. So that's why I'm kind of only doing Havoc Demon Hunters. Now I'm focusing a lot of my attention now on classic Season of Discovery. So if there is another class that has undergone significant talent tree changes and the macro needs done, by all means let me know. But so far I'm only getting reached out to for Havoc Demon Hunters. So here we are. We're going to go over the 10.2 version of the Havoc Demon Hunter, and I'll show you guys what I've come up with. I'm actually very happy about this. Much like the Retribution Paladin, the changes that Rhett has gone through earlier in this expansion, I feel like this has made the class significantly more fun to play and just so much better. It works so much better in a macro, so I'm very happy about this one. So with all that being said, finally, let's go ahead and take a look at my talent build before we actually look at the macro itself. So there's only a few things I want to go over here. I don't go over every single thing, and always remember that, you know, we're not going for the min-max build. We're going for a build that will function well in a macro. We're trying to make the game easier to play. We're not entirely obsessed with, you know, min-maxing or whatever, but I'm going to try my best to make something as, you know, comprehensive, I guess, and functional as I can. Okay, so on the left side, you know, we have our standard, you know, Demon Hunter side of the tree, and both of these trees have changed significantly, so it's kind of crazy, actually. You know, there's some utility in here and there, you know, stuff like that, and then, you know, buffing of some of the other abilities, and then there are some actual abilities that we are adding into the rotation, like, for example, Fellblade. That's one we're going to go with. And down here at the bottom, the only other thing that I really want to talk about is the fact that I'm not going with the hunt. You can't make me. I don't have to, and I'm not going to, because I don't like the hunt. I don't like that tiny little cast timer on this melee ability. Well, it's not really melee, it's like technically a ranged charge kind of ability, but I don't like it. I'd never like it, and I don't want to use it, and it doesn't work well in the macro, so I'm not going to use it. I've chosen to go with Elysian Decree instead, and this works much better in the macro, even though it is a target location ability. Demon Hunters actually have a lot of those, and since they're melee, it can work out fine, but we'll go over that more when we actually look at the macro. But no, the hunt, Elysian Decree is what we're all about here, okay? So that's really the biggest thing. There's really nothing else in here super important. You could probably, you know, make a few changes in here if you wanted to, but overall, that's basically it. Now, on this side of the tree, there are a few additional things that I want to go over. There's a lot of different build options here. There are different ways you can go, and it's actually kind of cool. You can kind of, you know, see what they're going with here, and so it's kind of nice to have some pretty clear paths that you can go down to flesh out your, you know, your Havoc Demon Hunter pretty well. And so a popular way that people like to go right now is going down this way and getting all these like momentum style buffs, like where you're going to buff Fell Rush, Vengeful Retreat. I chose not to do that.
And the reason why is because those abilities don't work in the macro. I use them on separate buttons for you know, movement and stuff like that. And certainly you could go down this way if you want to, but I went with a build that would more highlight the macro and actually function with just the macro, and also just what I feel is a little bit easier to play. Okay, so I've gone down a different path, buffing other abilities like Blade Dance and especially Throw Glaive. So we're going down that path, and you know, even some Immolation Aura, different things like that, just buffing those abilities instead. So that's kind of the main thing there. There's also the I-Beam, you know, way to go. But I chose not to go that way either, because sometimes I mess up I-Beam because I'm moving and the macro uses it, and that's just my clumsiness, you know. But that's just kind of what happens when you're using a macro. So I felt like this would be the safest option. Man, it's pretty fun. It's easy to play. So that's just kind of what I did. So now let's go down the specifics. One of the big things, I highly recommend that you do take Demon Blades and get rid of Demon's Bite from your rotation, because when you look at this macro, there are a ton of abilities in this rotation. It is crazy to see how many abilities Havoc Demon Hunter has now. Come a long way from just kind of using, you know, Chaos Strike all the time. It's kind of funny actually, but here we are. So yeah, so get rid of Demon's Bite, go Demon Blades. It'll make things a little bit easier, and then you just kind of focus on all of your other abilities. And we've added a few extra abilities in here, like for example, we've added in Glaive Tempest, and also we have added in Essence Break, and pretty much everything else. Like, I don't think there's really any other significant additions. There might be a couple other abilities in here, but we'll go over all that stuff when we take a look at the actual macro itself. But that's kind of the idea. I went for what I felt would be the easiest playstyle, or at least, even if it's not the easiest, it's the one that I feel would function the best in a macro and make the macro work the best. Okay, so that's kind of my philosophy whenever I do these builds. So hopefully that makes sense. We're gonna type /GSE to open up Gnome Sequencer, and this macro is called Havoc. And if you want to use my talent build, you can just copy and paste this into your talent tree and you will be good to go. Otherwise, this is actually an all-in-one macro for Havoc Demon Hunters. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this is a standard sequential macro, not a priority list style macro. And the reason why is because there are so many abilities to get through. It's actually kind of insane. Okay, so the idea here is it's going to just cycle down through all the abilities, come back up to the top, and cycle through them down again. That's how it's going to work, and I feel like it works the best just because of how many abilities are actually in this rotation. If you try to use a priority list, which has been the more popular method in Gnome Sequencer, it doesn't seem to work as well in my experience with all the abilities that you actually have to use. I think there's like between 9 and 11 abilities. Honestly, it's actually kind of crazy. So anyway, with all that being said, we'll go down the list and you'll see what I'm doing here. So we're going to start things off with Chaos Strike. Now, remember, you're going to be, you know, spamming the macro. You know, you're going to be just, you know, tapping it fast, or, you know, whatever you're doing. And it's just going to kind of go through these abilities. So it really doesn't matter that much what order they're in. They're just going to be cycling through them all anyway. So as one is on cooldown or it can't be used, it's going to move on to the next one. Okay. So first up, Chaos Strike, and then we have Fell Blade. And then we start getting into Metamorphosis. And this is the first target location ability. Metamorphosis is one where you jump up and land on the ground and you turn into a demon. I've gone ahead and just put this in the main sequence of the macro. It's not really a big deal to just have that one extra button, and this ensures that it will go off more often as soon as it becomes available and it's off cooldown. So the way to make this work, because it is a target location ability, is to add this @player command inside these brackets here, along with combat no channeling. You'll see that no channeling is to not interrupt I-Beam, and then combat is to make sure that you only use this once you're in combat, so you're not like randomly turning into a demon because you fat fingered the button. But the @player is the most important part, because this will cause you to jump up and land where you're standing, and you'll go Metamorphosis that way. And since you're melee, that usually works out pretty well. I put Fell Blade early in here just to kind of help, you know, you kind of get into your target. So if you have a target selected and say before you get in range, you start spamming the macro, hopefully you'll use Fell Blade. That'll go off and that'll get you close, you know, even closer. You've also got Fell Rush to help you kind of get into combat as well. But once you're kind of in range, you know, you'll use Metamorphosis. Hopefully that's when you use it, and then you'll go into demon form, and that's what @player is for. Okay. And so you'll see a couple of other abilities that also have at player as well. Next up, we have Essence Break, kind of a longer cooldown, but it's going to go off every time. And then we have Glaive Tempest, kind of the same idea. Eye Beam is next. Again, a lot of these have the combat, no channeling. Eye Beam is the reason why no channeling exists. Combat is there so that you don't accidentally use these abilities outside of combat if you start spamming the macro. The last thing you want to do is use Eye Beam when you're not close to enemies. So I put it a little bit further down here just to kind of make sure it doesn't go off too early, but that's kind of the idea. Now, next up, we have Chaos Strike again. I put this in here a second time because, again, this is a sequential macro. We're just cycling down, and because there are so many abilities, I went about halfway down and added in a second Chaos Strike just to make sure that you're using it often enough to not overcap your fury too much. One of the biggest challenges in this is because there are so many cooldown abilities, I wanted to make sure that Chaos Strike was still getting used enough without being used too much. And so I felt like adding it in twice was enough to make sure that you're using a decent amount of your fury while also not just spamming Chaos Strike all the time. And so you're using your other abilities as well. But for the most part, it works out pretty well, but that's why Chaos Strike is in here twice. Next up, we have two more target location abilities, Elysian Decree and Sigil of Flame. I put those back to back, and again, they kind of work like Metamorphosis. Put that at player command in the line, and then you'll put Elysian Decree and Sigil of Flame at your feet. The macro will use both of those on cooldown. Next up, we have Immolation Aura, then we have Blade Dance, and then last up, we have Throw Glaive. So that's basically all of the abilities. There are a ton. And yeah, that's kind of the idea. The macro is going to try to be using all these abilities as much as it can. There's so many to get through. It's going to do its best. And then down here at the bottom, we have your standard targeting, target enemy, no harm, that kind of stuff that we always put in every macro. And then start attack because you are in fact melee and you want to always be swinging. So that was a lot. There are a lot of abilities in this rotation. The biggest challenge to get this macro to work well enough was managing fury with Chaos Strike. Okay, that was the biggest challenge I was having. And so at first I had one Chaos Strike in, and then I found that I was hardly using it. I was using it occasionally, but my fury was always overcapping. Now with two Chaos Strikes, I felt like I was using it decently well enough. It was kind of one of those things where there are times, because you have so many abilities that will generate more, fury, whenever you use Eye Beam, that kind of stuff. So sometimes you might overcap your fury. I've done the best I can to prevent that, but I feel like if I add any more Chaos Strikes in the macro, then it's going to be using Chaos Strike too much, and then you're going to be having problems because you do have a couple of other abilities that do use fury. So that's kind of why I've kept it at 2. If you want to put an extra Chaos Strike in the macro, you can. Maybe you could put it part of the way through down the macro again. I would maybe space it out between at least 2 to 3 abilities, so that way it's not just back to back. But the idea, of course, again, is to make sure that you're cycling through all of your abilities and just trying to use Chaos Strike just enough to hopefully not overcap your fury too often. And that's basically what the macro is going to try to do. Try and make sure that you are in melee range as much as possible, so that once you enter combat, especially, so that you're not accidentally using your target location abilities when you're not in range of enemies. That can happen from time to time. It's not the worst thing ever, but you want to try your best to min-max as much as you can, get the most out of the macro, but you're min-maxing with the macro, so tether your expectations. Obviously I say that with all due respect. I'm just trying to help people understand the nature of the macros. So that's pretty much all I can think of. The only other thing I can say is I do have Fell Eruption. That's another ability that I've taken, but that seems to be more of a CC ability. It does do a little bit of damage. With all the abilities in this rotation already, I didn't include it in the macro, so that's why it's not in there. Like I said, it does deal a little bit of damage, but it's kind of like Warrior's Stormbolt. It's one that's it's more of a stun or a utility than it is actual damage ability. So with everything else in here doing significantly more damage, I feel like it's just best not to include that in the macro. So I just wanted to clarify that. otherwise, that's pretty much everything you need to know about this macro and how it works. It's a lot to go over, but it does seem to perform really well. It's pretty easy. You don't have to worry about anything. You literally have everything managed in one button. You just spam it and you're pretty much good to go. You know, I'm obviously, as always, you'd probably do better if you can learn how to play your class and manage that accordingly or appropriately. But, you know, in terms of just having an easier time, or maybe you have an issue, like I said, there are tons of abilities in here. So maybe if you're someone that has trouble managing a lot of different abilities for some physical reason, or, you know, disability reason, or cognitive, or whatever it is, then this macro would hopefully certainly help you out. It certainly helps me out a lot with my visual disability. It's certainly very difficult to try to manage 10 to 12 buttons, but with this macro, it makes the Havoc Demon Hunter a lot more fun to play, and it actually is quite fun to play this class. So hopefully this will help you out. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and with all that being said, I will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button, and feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.